إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Dear respected brothers and sisters, we all know that children are the greatest blessings of life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayati dunya. That wealth and children, they are the adornment of this dunya. And so, money and children is what makes life beautiful for all of us. Regardless if an individual is a Muslim or a non-Muslim, wealth and family and having children is what makes this life worth living. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions this as a blessing for us, a blessing that He has given to us. And this is why having children is a natural desire that Allah has ingrained in every single human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. That it is pleasing to men, it is alluring to men that they desire women and they like children. Allah, He says, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. Men, they love women and children. So every single person, regardless of religion and creed, they desire the same thing. Both men and women, they want a loving spouse, they want a loving family, and they want a loving relationship and to have beautiful and healthy and well-mannered children. And in the Quran we have so many stories of those who did not have children, who could not have children. So much so that they even wanted to adopt someone as their own child. We know the famous story of the governor of Egypt and his wife. They could not have a child, and so they adopted Yusuf alayhi salam to be an adopted child. And we know also in Egypt, the Fir'aun, his wife also could not have any kids, and both of them said the exact same thing, that they want to adopt a child so that they can benefit from them. And so this tells us that parents, naturally they want to have children, that in order when these kids, they grow up, these children will benefit them. That when they grow older, somebody will be able to take care of them. Parents, they have it inside in them. They want to make sure that their children, they flourish, they become successful as they grow up. And this is an amazing psychological reality that no human being on the face of the earth wants to see someone else more prosperous and more successful than them. No human wants to see even their own brother or their own sister or their cousin or their uncle to be better than them, except a father who wishes that for his son, or a mother who wishes that for her daughter. We are supportive 100% of our kids, and we are ensuring, even at our own expense, to make sure that our kids are successful, even if they turn out to be better than us, even at our own expense. And we do this 100%, and we absolutely have no jealousy towards our children. We also have mentioned in the Quran some prophets they were unable to have any kids, so they made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them children, so that way they can carry on their legacy after them. And so now, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with children, with every children comes responsibilities. The primary responsibility that Muslim parents have towards their children in raising them to be righteous is to ensure that we ingrain, that we inculcate them to be righteous Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O you who believe, protect yourselves and your family from the fire of hell. And the scholars, they gave the tafsir of this by quoting several of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, saying that this means you raise them within the guidance of the religion by teaching them the religion. And also the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in the hadith narrated by both Bukhari and Muslim, أَلَا كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Verily all of you, every one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you is responsible for their flock. وَالرَّجُلُ رَاعٍ عَلَى أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ وَهُوَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ وَالْمَرْأَةُ رَاعِيَةٌ عَلَى أَهْلِ بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا وَوَلَدِهِ وَهِيَ مَسْئُولَةٌ عَنْهُمْ. The man, he is responsible. He is the guardian of his family and he is responsible for them. And a woman is the guardian of her husband's home and his children, and she is responsible for them. So both mother and father, they are both made responsible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And both of them will be asked by Allah about how they dealt with their flock. And therefore, in this khutbah, I see it only pertinent that in this blessed day we have both the parents present along with their children. And so I want to go ahead and remind myself and give myself advice, and then all of you with regards to some practical tarbiyah elements that we can implement in our life when it comes to raising our children. And so the first and the most important advice is to be role models for your children. If you yourself are not a good role model, then there is no way your children will have good character after you, will be a good role model. And this is the ultimate reality. Brothers and sisters, wallahi, the media is a lot to blame. The TV is to be blamed. The internet is to be blamed. Bad influence is to be blamed. But the number one blame for disrupted families, the number one blame for a broken family is the parents themselves. If we have not been role models to our sons and to our daughters, if we have not lived up to the ideals that we should be living up to, then how can we be blaming our kids for not living up to their responsibilities as children towards us? And in this, there are two elements that we can go ahead and consider. One is a deeni element, and the other is a dunyawi element. There's a psychological and there's also a spiritual element with regards to being role models. When it comes to psychological, when it comes to this dunyawi element, there's a universal rule that as you do, it will be done unto you. There are thousands of surveys that have been done that children who grow up with parents who are smoking, then the children are going to be much more predisposed in taking up that habit. Children who grow up in abusive households, in abusive relationships, where they see their father beating up their mother, these kids, these sons, when they grow up, they're going to do the exact same thing to their spouses. When the daughter sees the mother being disrespectful to her husband and yelling at him and treating him worse than she would treat someone on the street or in the masjid or at her workplace, then the daughter will go ahead and grow up and treat her husband the same way that she knows how to treat. And that is by seeing how she saw her mother treating her own father. This is not something it takes a genius to figure out. As you do in your family, your children will do when they grow up. So the first way to have good children is to be a good man, to be a good woman, to be a good father, to be a good mother yourself. The only way you can have polite children is if you are polite with yourselves. You want to have rowdy, loud children? Go ahead and be rowdy and be rude and see how your kids are going to grow up. And I have seen with my own eyes that every time a husband and a wife, a couple, they have good Islamic values in their life, the child will eventually return to Islam. I have seen with my own eyes teenagers rebel against their parents. They will go ahead and experiment with drugs and dating and womanizing and doing so many things. And they have this rebellious stage up until their age 25, 30, and once they get married, they have the family of their own. There is that one memory that keeps on telling them, be like your parents. But when kids, they are doing these things, they're smoking, they are doing haram, and the only memory that they go back to is what? Well, my parents were doing this. My father cheated on my mother. My mother, to get back at him, she used me as a weapon. And so you see how the cycle keeps on going, even with his generation. If you are a good parent, you will go ahead, even if it is subconsciously, even if it is indirectly. You don't need to go ahead and talk too much to your kids. All you have to do is let your character and your actions speak for themselves. With regards to the spiritual aspect, this example can be found in the story of Khidr and the young boy that he killed. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spare those two parents from this boy? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spare them, and in return Allah gave them another boy who was better than him? Because Allah, He says in the Quran that those parents, they were righteous, and the mother and the father, they were good people, they were believers in Allah. So Allah did not want to test them with a rebellious child. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wanted good for them by giving them a good child, a respectful child. So if you want to have good children, you have to start with yourself. You have to start in your home. You have to start with the relationship that you have with your wife or with your husband. And the second advice to myself and all of you is as-salah, as-salah, as-salah. This cannot be overemphasized, my dear respected brothers and sisters. We need to make sure that our children, they grow up praying on time and they love to pray. Why? Not only because Allah has emphasized this in the Quran, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاسْتَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. Not only because the Prophet ﷺ, he told us and he advised us and he said, make sure your children, they pray at the age of 7 and you force them at the age of 10. But also that there is a selfish reason as well, that every single one of us should want our children to pray. When our children pray regularly, we are actually teaching them that there is an authority higher than yourself. And so when they are praying, they recognize that authority which is higher than their parents. Because in order to keep your children in check, you cannot always use your authority. That's circular logic. You have to obey me because I'm your parent. That circular comes back to you. You have to use an authority which is higher than you. And what is that authority? Allah. And if they are prostrating to Allah at least 5 times a day, they will be able to recognize that if I am making dua, my dua is not going to be accepted except if I am good to my parents. And if I want success, I cannot be successful until my parents are pleased with me. This is that spiritual element. Another selfish element that can be in this is that when you are no longer in this dunya, who is going to make dua for you? If you did not train your child to be making salah, who is going to be performing umrah on your behalf or hajj if you did not do it? Who is going to be giving charity if you were stingy with your wealth and you did not teach them the act of giving? And who is going to do this and who and who and who? The number one thing that we need to, from a young age, if they are sleeping and it's the time for Fajr, you make sure you wake them up as if there's a fire in the house. How are you going to wake them up? Are you going to wake them up? How? Just 1 time, 2 times, and they don't wake up, it's okay? Allah, He says, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Protect yourself and your children from the fire of hell. Extinguish that fire for them by making sure that from a young age you are ingraining in them this aspect of salah. And if you're not praying salah, brothers and sisters, it's time for all of us to pray regularly and on time. And the third advice, my brothers and sisters, is make dua for your children regularly. Sincerely make dua for your kids. Let me ask you and ask yourselves, when was the last time you raised your hands up to Allah and you made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you with righteous children? When was the last time we made dua, oh Allah, give my kids guidance and hidayah? Because wallahi, if you are not asking Allah for it, why do you think you're going to get it? If you're not asking Allah for good children, if you're not asking Allah to protect your children, then how do you think you're going to get good kids? And also there's a psychological element. Every time you are asking Allah to protect your children, when there is an evil or a harm, you will be the first one to protect them, because it's always in the back of your head. When you are asking Allah to make your kids righteous, when there's an opportunity of righteousness, you will make sure you encourage your kids to do it. But if you're not making dua to Allah to protect them, to give them goodness, to make them righteous, there are so many opportunities and we let it pass by and we think that it's just going to take a miracle for it to happen. My dear respected brothers and sisters, the Quran has even taught us so many du'as that you can make. Wallahi, I know a couple, before the child was born, they were making dua. What was the dua? رَبِّ جَعَلْنِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي رَبَّنَا وَتَقَبَّلْ دُعَاء. Oh Allah, make me an establisher of the salah and make my kids. And that kid, from a young age, he has never left salah. And when the opportunity for salah comes, you're going to make sure that your kid has performed the salah just like you make sure, and even more, whether your kid has finished their homework and are prepared for the test. There's one important dua that we should always inculcate and include in our dua. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. O our Lord, grant us from among our wives and offspring the coolness of our eyes. And O Allah, make them the leaders and the examples of the righteous. When was the last time we made this dua? In the last 1 week, has anyone made this dua? How can you expect your child to be the coolness of your eyes? How can you expect them to be the imam of the community or even their own circle of friends? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the dua of the father, the hadith specifically mentions walid. There's other versions, but in this particular version, the dua of a father for or against his son is accepted. My dear respected brothers, my young brothers, my children, make sure you ask your father to make dua for you. Don't upset them, because their dua is going to be accepted, and there is no hijab between their dua and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my dear respected brothers and sisters, from now on, every dua that you make, that you raise your hands towards Allah, include your kids in there as well. Make sure you make mention of them, and you will see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them. Make dua, O Allah, make them good and righteous Muslims. O Allah, make them your sincere worshippers. O Allah, guide them and guide others through them. These are some basic du'as that we can make for our kids. The fourth piece of advice, my dear respected brothers and sisters, that I would like to give, and I speak as somebody who has lived for long periods of time in the East, but also was raised and educated here in the West and lived here for 33 years. Dear parents, please realize that we are now living in different times and a different place and a different society and a different culture. Frankly, we cannot raise our kids the way we were raised back home. It worked for our parents raising us over there. And may Allah bless them and forgive them and have mercy upon them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give our parents and our grandparents the highest level of Jannah. They have tried their best to raise us, but we cannot use those tactics over here. You're sending your kids 8 hours to be indoctrinated in the schools here. You're sending your kids 8 hours to go ahead and learn the culture of America and their history. And you're expecting to go ahead and bring your back home style. It doesn't make sense. There's a clash. They see the parents of their friends and how they are with them. And then they see their parents. They're going to compare, just like how you compare your child with others. These kids nowadays, they have critical thinking. They are smart. They compare. They see. The whole world is at their fingertips. Before, how many women did you see? You didn't see more than your mother, your sisters, and your aunts. These kids nowadays, any woman from anywhere in the world, they have access to any information. And they are becoming more and more tech savvy than their own parents. So dear respected brothers, we need to go ahead and learn parenting techniques that is suitable, without any Islamic compromise, that is suitable for our time and place and for the challenges that we are facing right now. And so therefore, I would just like to suggest just a few points. Number one, be friendly with them. If you don't want to be their friends, that's okay. Don't be their friends. Be their father. Be their mother. But be friendly with them. What does that mean? It means that when you speak to them in a friendly way. It means when you speak to them, you don't shout at them. You don't rebuke them. The only time you speak to them, you don't say, do this, don't do this. That's the only time you speak to them. No. Be friendly with them. The way you are, if there's a teenager co-worker with you, or if you have a teenager employee, are you going to yell at them? You yell at them tomorrow, they're going to go ahead and accuse you of something, and next thing you know, half of the store business is theirs. Be friendly with them, my brothers and sisters. Don't yell at them and don't always command and prohibit them. Number 2, be empathetic in your communication. Put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of your 10 and 12-year-old. If they make a mistake or they are experimenting with haram or talking to girls, they know what's going on. At this age, 13, 14, they are going through hormonal changes, physiological, anatomical changes in their body. And if they make a mistake, just remember when you made the mistake. If they are experimenting with drugs, remember that one cigarette butt you found on the street and you experimented with that. Have that open, but also empathetic, not sympathetic, empathetic communication with your kids. Talk to them about things that it is seen as taboo. No, it's the reality. Talk to them about having relationship with the opposite gender, with pornography, with these ills of the society. When your son and your daughter, when they feel comfortable, they will come to you and they will open up to you. And they will see you listening to them. Number 3, take them out. They want to go to a sports game, you should be the one driving them. They want to go out and eat, instead of going out with their friends, you go out and eat with them. They want to watch something halal or Islamic, you watch something with them. Don't always push them towards their friends because you don't know the discussions that are taking place. Maybe they are having some negative influences on them and then they bring those influences and so on. Be friendly with them, have open and empathetic communication, and take them out and be there for them. The 5th, my dear respected brothers and sisters, give them responsibilities. Give them chores. Part of raising kids is to stop treating them like little kids. They're 13, 14. They are mature according to Islam. They are responsible. Allah will hold them responsible for anything good and bad that they have done. So you need to stop treating them as kids. And unfortunately, parents nowadays, they keep on babying their kids up until age 18. And then when they become 18, they don't even know how to cook an omelet. They can't even make their own room. Give them chores. To wash the dishes, to do something, make them responsible. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحِ. Allah even tells us to test them with responsibilities. Of course, this ayah is referring to the orphans, but we can go ahead and apply it to our own kids as well. You want to go shopping? Give them money and say, go and buy this and see. They're successful, give them a higher chore. Why don't you go ahead and research this particular thing I'm thinking. Maybe it's the phone bill, you want to reduce it, whatever it is. Give them these responsibilities. And don't think, oh, they can't do it. The world is not going to come to an end if the kitchen is not cleaned very good. If the dishes are not washed, today is not going to be washed good, but tomorrow it is. Let them make mistakes. This is part of them. Better they make mistakes in front of you in your house than for them to make mistakes out in the real world, and then no one will have patience with them. And the final advice that I have is provide a good environment, an Islamic environment. Bring them to the masjid. Bring them to Islamic classes. Bring them to the weekend schools that we have. And I put this last because a lot of the parents, they put this number one. They think that we, mashallah, are miracle workers. You come and inshallah they will become pious and angelic. They come here for 1 hour and they pray, they learn some stories, and then they go back and they still see their child talking back to them. No, brothers, this is not how it works. The number one is the parents and the family. Everything else is secondary. We're not miracle workers. We don't have a special dua. All the du'as that I know, you can find it in the Quran and in the Sunnah. But this is not to say the importance of making sure you come and you bring your kids. And make sure your kids are next to you too. It's very important. Don't put that burden on anyone else. Give them that Islamic education, and that happens by you being a role model. And brothers and sisters, the rewards of raising a good family, a righteous family, there are too many to mention. Just for the sake of time, I will mention one. And the losses for not doing so are also too many, but I will just mention one. So one reward for raising a good family, and one loss for failing to raise a good family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ أَلْحَقْنَا بِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَمَا أَلَتْنَاهُمْ مِنْ عَمَلِهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ كُلُّ امْرِئٍ بِمَا كَسَبَ رَهِينٌ. Those people who believed and their children after them, meaning they also believed, meaning they were righteous as well, they followed them in that belief, we shall join them with their parents. We shall join the children and their parents up in Jannah. What does this mean? The Mufassirin, like Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, he said that if your children were given a lower level and you are given a higher level, Allah will put your kids next to you. You were a good family here, you will be a good family in Jannah. And if you have a lower Jannah and they have a higher Jannah, Allah will bring you up, because there's a rule in Jannah. You can go up, you cannot come down. And imagine if you are good, but your parents may not have been very good, Allah will bring your parents up to you. And the loss, the opposite, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّ الْخَاسِرِينَ الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَهْلِيهِمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَلَا إِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ فِي عَذَابٍ مُقِيمٍ. Indeed, the true losers are the ones who lost themselves and their families on the day of resurrection. Allah, He says, they are the true losers. They lost their kids in this dunya, and you're going to lose your kids in the hereafter. You didn't benefit from them in this world, and they're not going to make shafa'ah for you on the day of judgment. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and our family. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our family and our children the coolness of our eyes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of our family members righteous and make them the establishers of the religion and establishers of the sunnah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them establishing the salah and the obedience in our house and in the community. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim. ونفعني وإياكم بما فيه من الآيات والذكر الحكيم. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وعلى أصحاب سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداءك أعداء الدين. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا والمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. رب اجعلنا مقيمين الصلاة ومن ذريتنا ربنا وتقبل دعاء. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا والمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. ربنا واجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك وأرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا هب لنا من لدنك ذرية طيبة إنك سميع الدعاء. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه يزدكم واستغفروه يغفر لكم واتقوه يجعل لكم من أمركم مخرجا. وأقم الصلاة.